Good day, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome back to the channel, and today I'm going to be making a video that I have been waiting to make, actually, and that is we are going to go through the 2024 Fatboy. But, of course, before we do, we've got to look at a viewer bike, and this is Barry's bike. Apparently, he used to live around here in Regina, but he's been living out in Ontario and Niagara area for the last 40 years, and this is his 2023 Street Bob that he calls Frankenstein. It has a Fatboy 5-gallon fuel tank, Lowrider-esque console, forward controls, Reinhardt slip-ons, Saddleman knuckle profiler seat, saddle-line bags, 14-inch wind splitter windshield, and tuned with the Pro Street tuner. So quite a bit of work done to this bike, a lot of add-ons. Thanks, Barry, for sending it in. And if anybody else wants their bike shown on the channel, send me an email with some pictures. I'll get it up in a video. My email address is in the description to this video. Okay, folks, just to get started, I just want to point out that in 2018, Harley changed their Softail models, including the Fatboy. They went with a Milwaukee 8 engine, a different frame, new suspension, and that helped a lot. The suspension is a lot better, the power is better, and the new frame, all that dropped the weight by about 30 pounds on this bike. And it's been a big issue, or it's very controversial for a lot of people. They like the old classic style of the Fatboy over the new style, but we will touch on some of those areas. So let's get at her. So let's first have a little walk around of our 2024 Fatboy and go over a few specs. This bike has a length of 93.3 inches, a seat height of 26.5 inches, and a ground clearance of 4.5 inches. It also has a 30-degree rake on the front and a wet weight of 699 pounds. Now, these dimensions give the bike a slightly raked out but still slammed look. Now, the bike only comes in chrome, and it comes in 4 colors for 2024. This bike here is the Vivid Black. You also have Billiard Gray is the base color for this year. You can also get Red Rock or Sharkskin Blue. Now, other than the base gray, the other colors will cost you an upcharge of anywhere from $450 to $800 Canadian. And on the subject of price, the MSRP is $26,499 Canadian or $21,999 US. Now, along with this bike, you're also going to get a fob and some keys. The fob, as long as you have it on you and you're within range, this bike will start. If not, the circuit to the starter will be cut off and you won't be able to start this bike. As far as the keys go, there is a place right on the right side of the neck of the frame where you can put the key in and lock the front forks. Other than that, this bike also has a security system that comes standard, and I would suggest changing your security pin when you get this bike. Now on the front of this bike, we got the signal lights here, which are bullet style. These are LEDs that I put in. They're generally just halogen bulbs. They're amber lenses. However, the big headlight is LED, and you can see it's surrounded by this big chrome nacelle, which is different from previous to 2018 models that had a bullet style front headlight. We have chrome covers over the front forks, the quote-unquote beer can covers, and the lowers, which unfortunately are not chrome. You've got this big fat fender on the front. Now this is a slightly bobbed fender, which was a big deal when the new style bikes came out in 2018. A lot of people liked the more longer or more flared fender, and it caused a lot of people to look away from this model. Now, the reason I would say is it's bobbed is because of tires like this. This front tire is the largest production tire that Harley has, and it is a 160 Michelin Scorcher. The front wheel on this bike is an 18-inch cast aluminum machined wheel called Lakester wheels. The Fatboy generally has been notable for solid wheels. When a bike first came out in 1990, that's what it had. They ended up moving on to a bullet hole type wheel, and then in 2018 went back to the solid wheels up until 2022. After that, now we have these slotted or cutouts in the wheel, and I am still a fan of the actual solid wheel that the Fatboy first came with. Now, behind the front wheel, between the down tubes of the frame, we have the oil cooler. Now, also above the oil cooler, we have mounted the horn, which is a much better place than it was before, which we'll get into a little bit more later. Now, this oil cooler is kind of covered up. I have my oil cooler guard on it and a chrome cover behind that. But generally, it acts more or less as a radiator for your oil, which is a good idea on these bikes. If I am correct, the air will flow through the cooler. The oil will go through the rear head first, then to the front and back around. But a very good idea by Harley to put these on in the 2018 model year. Now, the Fatboy has always come with forward controls and footboards, and on this side we also have the rear brake pedal, and right behind that our rear brake master cylinder. Here we have one of the stars of the show. This is an air/oil cooled, fuel injected Milwaukee 8 engine. Now, why is it called a Milwaukee 8? Well, it hails from Milwaukee and it has 8 valves, 4 per cylinder. The Fatboy got this engine in 2018, and at that time you could get either a 107 or 114 cubic inch engine. These days, only the 114 is available, so this is a 114 cubic inch, or for us metric folks, 1868 cc engine. Now, this thing puts out 119 foot-pounds of torque and 94 horsepower, which is most likely measured at the crank. This is a single cam pushrod overhead valve engine. The cam is located behind the cam cover, which, changing out, in my opinion, is the best bang for your buck performance-wise. This engine is also solid mounted directly to the frame, so it's not rubber mounted. Now, because of this, the engine is dual counterbalanced to reduce the amount of vibration, so there's very little in this engine overall, especially compared to previous models. There are also piston jets that spray under the pistons to help further reduce the heat. So you couple that with the oil cooler, and this engine is much cooler than the previous twin cam models. The Fatboy comes stock with what's called the ventilator air cleaner. Now, this is a low-profile open air cleaner that exposes the filter element for better airflow. The stock medallion on this air cleaner is actually black with the 114 logo. I have a Screaming Eagle one put on this one. And for a filter, it comes with a paper filter, which is somewhat restrictive. So I've went ahead and put a K&N in this so it breathes much better. Also, a rain sock comes with this bike stock to cover the air cleaner if you're out in the rain or a very dirty environment. As for the exhaust, the Fatboys always come with this shotgun style exhaust. Now, this is a 2-into-2 setup, and the stock mufflers on the Fatboy and, well, all Harleys are fairly restrictive due to having catalytic converters in them. Unfortunately, that's mandated by the government, so Harley can really do not much about it. The mufflers on this are not stock. These are Tab Performance slip-ons with zombie baffles. I do have the stock heat shields on, however. And in between the pipes, we have the passenger pegs, as this is set up for 2 people. But people like to hear the pipes, so let's have a little listen. Now, this portion of the bike was a big change in the Softail models in the 2018 model year. This area used to be where the oil tank was. In 2018, it was moved to below the bike, which was a good move, as having 4 or 5 liters of boiling oil right under your crotch didn't do much to reduce heat for the rider. This is now an electrical cover. The stock covers are actually black. However, the covers I have on this bike are chrome from a 2024 breakout. Now, behind this cover, you will find the battery, which is now a little harder to access through the side, as the battery used to be located directly under the seat. You also now have your rear suspension is under the seat, which leads me to the dial that sticks out from this cover. The dial is for adjusting your rear suspension preload. You can now adjust the rear suspension simply by a turn of the wrist. You can even adjust it on the fly or at a stoplight if you really feel the need. And this is very much improved over the previous Fatboys before 2018. On those older bikes, you had the shocks up under the frame, and you pretty much had to jack your bike up and get under there with a wrench just to adjust the suspension. So now it is a way easier process, and in my opinion anyway, a very good move by Harley. So here we have our oil filler and dipstick, and right beside it we have the 6-speed transmission. Now, the filler and dipstick for this transmission is in kind of behind that plastic cover down at the bottom. It's in a terrible spot. I wish Harley put it in a different area. Now, talking about the transmission, I have had no issues with this tranny. It is very smooth, and I've had no problem finding neutral, which is something that a lot of people complain about on these transmissions, but it's worked absolutely great for me so far. Moving further back, we have our chrome fender strut holding up this big bobbed rear fender. I assumed it is bobbed this much just to show off that fat rear tire, which we'll be getting to. We have our floating single disc rear brake with 2-piston brake caliper. I should also mention this bike comes standard with ABS. Now, some people will say a bike of this size needs dual brakes in the front or the back. I disagree. I think that's overkill, and I have honked on these brakes pretty hard on my 2021 and had no problems whatsoever. But behind this rotor, we have our other 18-inch wheel, cast aluminum, that you can see is deeply dished, and that is because of our next thing. And the next thing is this guy. This is a 240 Michelin Scorcher tire. It is the largest production tire Harley has. Now, only the Fatboy and the Breakout come with this size of a tire. The rear signal lights on this bike have been replaced with LEDs and smoke lenses. Stock are bulbs along with red lenses. Now, on this model, you'll see that the license plate holder is directly behind the wheel. On some other models, particularly in the States, the license plate holder is off to the side. Now, the reason for this is basically due to Canadian regulations. We have to have this tail light on the back here. On the other models, you'll probably just see the reflector under the fender, and the brake lights have been integrated into the signal lights. But I guess here in Canada, our regulators think we're not bright enough to figure that out. Coming to the other side, we have our belt final drive and our chrome belt cover, our rear passenger peg, and this other side electrical cover. Now, behind this cover is where you will find the brains of your bike. You'll find the ECM, fuses, and also where you would plug in a tuner if you went that way. You're also going to have the plug that sticks out there at the bottom where you can plug in your battery tender or possibly maybe some heated gear. And now we come to the primary, which is short for primary drive. And the primary drive on this bike is a chain that runs behind this cover in an oil bath. Also behind this big 114 derby cover is where you will find the clutch. It is also where you will fill the primary if you're doing an oil change on it. Now, one thing about this area of the bike is on these later models, they have it open behind the primary. They used to have it all enclosed, but they've decided to make an open space right back where the shift linkage is. If we get a shot behind there, you'll see that they have an open space, and that is just for more airflow and for a little better cooling to keep things, well, more cool so they don't get so hot as they did in the previous models. We have the coil on the 2018 later Fatboys mounted to the left side middle of the engine on the side of the bike. This was previously where the horn and its cover were mounted on the 2017 and earlier models. And as you can see, the bike has 4 spark plugs now as opposed to the previous 2. Of course, we have our left footboard and our shift lever, and it is 1 down and 5 up, baby. We got our shift linkage, and of course, down underneath, we've got our fancy little kickstand here. Now, on the left side neck of the frame here, there's a USB port that you could plug your phone charger into. I've never used it, so I couldn't tell you how fast it would actually charge something like your phone. And now we're back up to the front wheel. And here on the left side, we have our single floating disc rotor and 4-piston caliper. Now, there's a lot of people on the internet, on YouTube, that will tell you that these are loose if they make a little bit of a clunk. Well, they're supposed to have a little bit of play in them, so I would not be concerned unless you can take that rotor and move it about a 1/4 to a 1/2 inch. It's always worked fine for me. There will be a little play, so don't get too concerned. So here we have our big fat handlebars. They're 2-inch risers with a double clamp here. Way back in the day, that used to be just one big solid clamp. We come over to the right side. We've got our mirror. We've got our front brake and front brake master cylinder. And of course, we've got our controls. We've got our run, kill switch, ignition, hazards, and of course, we've got our signal light. Now, if we go on to the other side here, we have our other mirror, we have our clutch lever, and we have our controls, of course. We've got our high and low beam, we've got our horn, and that little button with the circle on it switches through your speedometer. We've got your other signal light, and of course down here we've got your cruise control kind of in the shadows there. And I really do like the look of these handlebars. They really give a really nice look just right from the front. And back in the day when the Harley Fatboy first came out, they were a little more of a buckhorn style, but still nice. On the top of the fuel tank, we have the chrome dash with your 5-inch analog speedometer. It will also show you the digital gear, odometer, fuel level, fuel range, RPM, and clock. It also has this little Fatboy nameplate in it. And coming down straight down the middle of the gas tank, we have this bullet hole chrome piece here, which on previous to 2018 models was actually leather with usually the Fatboy logo pressed into it. Now, the gas tank itself holds 5 gallons with an estimated 47 miles per gallon. Fatboys previous to 2022 had 2 gas caps. The one on the right was the filler, the one on the left was decorative and used for symmetry. And way back in the day, that left gas cap was actually your fuel gauge. Now, the badging on the side has changed multiple times over the last 34 years. It started as a decal, but moved to a badge around the 2010 model year when the Fatboy Low came out. Classically, it has been a double-winged badge, with the newer models having them up until 2022. Since then, it's come with a single-wing badge like this one. Now, I'm more of a fan of the double-winged emblem, but the one thing I do really like about the single wing is this yellow ring around the star, because this is a callback to the original yellow rings on the first production Fatboy in 1990. Now we come to the seat. Now, this seat is a low-profile seat, which gives it a very nice look from the side. However, this is also a very firm seat. If you are planning on riding on the highway for longer than 30 to 40 minutes at a time, you may want to invest in something a little more comfortable. This is a 2-part seat. The back is for the passenger. Now, if you remove this little bolt here, you can take this back pillion off, and then there are 2 other bolts underneath there that you can pull off, and the seat will slide right off. There's also a passenger strap that was on this as well, but I took that off as I usually don't carry a passenger. So we're in the garage here. I took off the seat, and this is your rear monoshock for your rear suspension. Now, like I said before, this is a definite upgrade in suspension from the prior to 2018 models. This is the shock that the dial down here on the side will adjust. Now, some models, for example, the Lowrider S does not have that. You would need a spanner wrench that would actually move that. There is your battery down there, by the way. So you can see it's a little bit further down than previous. And actually, there is my tuner. So you can see where that's mounted on there too. But a big upgrade over suspension of the past. But enough talking. Let's get this guy out on the road and take it for a spin. Now, the first thing you'll probably notice about the Fatboy is the low center of gravity, which makes it very easy to pick up off the side stand. It also gives you that close to the road feeling and makes handling on this bike surprisingly good for a 700-pound motorcycle with fat tires. Now, on the subject of handling, I wouldn't say that this is a nimble bike, and it also only has a lean angle of about 25.5 degrees on either side. So lean too much and you're going to hear those floorboards scraping the pavement. This bike is made more for straight lines and long sweeping curves, which is actually great for where I live. And speaking of turning, you're going to want to take corners possibly a little slower and maybe a little wider until you get the hang of this bad boy. The vibration on this bike I found is minimal. As I said before, it is a dual counterbalanced engine, and it really makes a difference. And I think I talked about the shifting when I was talking about the transmission. This bike, it shifts very easily. I have heard people talk about how hard it is to get into neutral. I have had zero issue with that at all. I can find neutral every time on this. I don't know if they changed something or not, but it is very easy to do on this bike. Now, as for power, let's face it, this is definitely not a rocket. I find it is a slow starter through the first couple of gears, but once you get through those, this bike really starts to pull. These Milwaukee 8 engines are low revving torque engines that are known for neck snapping power, but not necessarily for high speed. In other words, you may not get anyone off the line, but you may pull away down the stretch. You can always remedy this, of course, with upgrades such as a good lumpy cam, But a stage 1 like I have on this bike probably won't do much for you performance-wise, other than maybe getting the bike up to speed slightly quicker. With a weight like is on this bike, I've heard folks say that you should have dual discs up front. I disagree. Like I said before, I've had to honk on the brakes on my 2021 Fatty before, and there was no issue whatsoever. For me, I think the single disc brakes work just fine, and actually dual discs would be more of an overkill in my opinion. As for comfort, this is a very nice riding position. It's almost like sitting in a chair. With the forward controls, just putting your feet out a little farther. You know, if you're a taller rider, and I'm talking over 6 feet, you may want to consider taller risers or maybe some ape hangers, as you may feel a little slouched with these lower bars. As for the seat, we discussed that it's not very good for longer rides, so you may want to switch that out. And also the taller rider will most likely want a seat that will push you back at least a couple of inches. So in the end, in conclusion, the Fatboy is a great bike for someone who likes that hot rod style, that low slung cruiser look. It is not a bike that is made for really nimble handling and really high performance. It is mostly, in my opinion, made more for style. Now, you can use this bike for booting around town, or it can also be used for long trips. I have taken previous model Fatboys halfway across Canada more than once. So to me, it is the best looking and most iconic bike Harley has ever made, or quite frankly, in my opinion, currently makes. No matter when I have strayed, I keep coming back home to the Fatboy. But that's it for my review. You know, let me know if you managed to get through it all in one sitting, or maybe there's something I missed. So feel free to leave something in the comments. And until next time, you guys get on your bikes, get on your Fatboys, and we will see you in the next one.